Serious? Kids of Reddit who were a part of the foster care system, what are some of your horror stories? Being painfully aware that the families I was staying with did not take me in for any reason other than money. Abuse and negligence was an everyday occurrence, and I had no idea that abuse wasn't normal. My adoptive dad has an anecdote from when I was around 5 and came to live with him for the first time. I opened the fridge, and with wide eyes, said in disbelief, "You have food in here?" So yeah, the whole foster care system is pretty flawed and fricked up. Happy I was able to get out. Definitely not as horrific as some of these other comments, more just on the weirder spectrum, but having to bathe with the other foster kids at the same time. As in, sitting in a bathtub with someone else you hardly knew. I grew up with my mother and stepdad, but whenever her friends would come over, they would force us to take baths with their kids. Until I was 7 and we moved away from her friends, but it was strange for me too. I wasn't in foster care, but my parents fostered a lot of other kids while I was growing up. The one that sticks with me is when I was about 4 or 5. A little boy came to stay with us. He was about 2 years and I remember her asking my mom, "Why does that little boy have casts on both his legs? I thought you could only break one at a time." And she just kind of sobbed and said because some parents aren't very nice to their little boys. I didn't really understand what any of that meant until years later when I remembered it for some reason or another. I asked her about it and apparently one of his parents broke both of his legs and threw him into the wall. I still think about him and wonder how his life turned out. A whole lot that I try not to reminisce, but the short end of the stick is my foster parents clearly had no intention of showing me any kind of love. Becoming their foster child after being passed around the rest of my family and being rejected was really scarring for me. I moved in with them freshman year of high school and I actually ended up staying with them the whole way through. The only reason I chose to say is because if I left for another foster house, I wouldn't be able to go to the same school, and while they were few, I made some really good friends I wasn't willing to give up, so I decided to put up with the neglect. In hindsight, I suppose I've become stronger over the experience, but it always scares me thinking of ever talking to my family again or even having a girlfriend because I'm afraid that I'll treat them poorly like my family did me. There are plenty of people who learn how not to be a spouse parent from their own family. You can't let them ruin the good in you that you can share with others. The only foster home I actually have memories of was amazing. I went to live with my mama, her name, at 10 months old. She was so kind and just had this aura around her that felt like home. I lived with her and her 3 children until midway through kindergarten. One afternoon when we got off the bus and were going inside to change into play clothing, my social worker was at the kitchen table. He told me to pack everything up. I was so bewildered, but I did as I was told. It was like a light had been shut off in my mama. When I came out with all my things packed, the social worker said that mama's adoption process had been stalled and he found me family to live with. He told me I would be much happier in a white family than with a black family. I was so confused. Mama was all I knew. She told me I would always be family and she would keep fighting to adopt me. I got in my social worker's car and he drove me to my paternal grandparents' home. I lived with them the rest of my childhood, but I spent every Sunday at mama's. My grandparents weren't bad and my foster home wasn't bad, but being pulled out of a loving home that was all I knew was terrible. It was all because the social worker that had been assigned recently didn't think I belonged in a black family and he found bio family. Still talk to my mama often and I'll always be thankful for her and who she is as a person. Her unapologetic take no crap but always kind attitude is who I strive to be. You couldn't shame her because she never did anything she'd be ashamed of. She's honestly the best person I've ever known. Seeing her at the table devastated still haunts me some nights when I lay in bed. This brought tears to my eyes. Hopefully I'm not too late, but here goes mine. I'm typing on my phone, so excuse typos and such. My parents just recently got divorced and they were fighting really bad. My mom moved us back to Florida from Illinois and had us stay at our aunt's house for a month or 2. At the time there was 4 of us. I was 3 to 4 years old. My younger brother was around 2. My older sister and brother were no older than 11 or 12. Anyway, my mom went back to Illinois to finalize some things and get some belongings of ours. So we lived with our aunt. Within those first 2 weeks, from what my mom told us, After signing temporary power of attorney over to my aunt, she put us in foster care. I was in multiple homes, from what I can remember. I was so young, but some memories will never leave. One of the first homes was the worst one. If I didn't eat my food, I stayed the night at the kitchen table. One time I threw up and I got thrown into a room for a full day and wasn't allowed out. I remember crying under the door saying I was sorry. That same house had like 6-7 kids in it. I shared a room with 4 other children. From what I remember though, the children were very nice. The foster parents were terrible. Not only did they verbally abuse us, they fought each other. The husband and wife would essentially beat the crap out of each other in front of us. It was honestly the scariest crap I saw when I was that young. Then I got moved houses after some time. I can't remember them all, but I do remember temporarily being under the same household as my younger brother. We had a very nice woman and her older son, maybe husband. They were so nice. We called her Mrs. Kim. She bought us so many toys, took us to the park all the time. She was an angel. I remember her face still to this day. I hope she's doing well. Almost failing my classes in high school because 10 teen girls in a 3-bedroom house with 2 staff members and 1 van meant getting home from everybody's drug test appointments and grocery shopping and crap at like 8 at night. And nobody was allowed to be in their rooms until bedtime. So no homework got done until 10 PM under my sheets with a flashlight. Only ever got half my work done and started getting into trouble for falling asleep in class. Bullied for being the only girl in the house who didn't drink and get high at every possible opportunity. New staff every month or so because the pay was crap. So never had anyone to talk to. Verbally and emotionally abused by the power tripping B who owned the place and collected checks for every girl who stayed there. Got beat up for Reading. Had to watch Grease and Legally Blonde on repeat every night because those were the only 2 movies we had. No privacy, no respect, no compassion. We were simply cattle. Was constantly sexually harassed by foster brothers, both other fosters and the actual biological kids. Luckily it never progressed past heavy groping, but boy am I glad I'm out of the system now. I'm glad for you too. Florida ex-foster care child here, so strap in boys and girls. I'm not worried about any doxing. This was years ago and I don't even know if the place still exists, since I moved to the other side of the globe. There exists a company in Central Florida known as the Arnett House, which has a large compound in Ocala. Due to the lack of available foster homes and jails for kids, some genius decided it would be a great idea to house criminal children and foster children together because they're all problem kids, right? You got in by either being taken into foster care and placed there, or you broke the law so many times that a Florida judge made you a resident at Arnett for rehabilitation, or both. While I was stuck there, I saw all sorts of crap. Staff members were either great or horrible, nothing ever in between. Once a fight broke out where one of the criminal girls attacked my foster friend, and the staff just sat back for a couple minutes to watch before intervening. I ended up jumping in between them and throwing my arms out sort of like in a T-pose, until staff eventually pulled the criminal girl away. Yeah, I got the nickname Jesus. My long hair at the time probably had something to do with it too. When my younger brother was moved in, I found out he, 16, was flirting and making semi-sexual moves at a mentally handicapped resident girl, 13. I talked to him about it, told him that was not okay, and he told me to mind my business. I alerted the staff, and they explained there was nothing they could do until they both ran off together and fricked in the nearby woods, like a different couple had done a few days prior. Oh, and last story for now, I wasn't allowed to learn to drive. I lived there from age 16-18. When my high school offered driver's ed courses for free, I was explicitly banned from taking them, because the big boss B claimed that if I learned to drive I could theoretically steal their van and drive away with a bunch of the other residents. I was a volunteer for our county social services department, simply helping out with office paperwork as I was a computer software engineer at the time. One of the social workers approached me one day and told me that there was a boy that they were having difficulty placing because he simply didn't want to be a foster child and wanted to stay with his mother who didn't want him, and asked the social services department to find him a home. I met the boy and we seemed to hit it off from the get-go, and he agreed to become my foster son. He was 10 at the time. He was with me till he turned 16, at which time I adopted him with his mother's blessings. I put him through college and he got a great job earning quite a bit more than I was. He continued to stay with me till he got married. I became grandpa to his great kids. His kids are adults now with families of their own, making me a great grandpa. So now, in my old age, I briefly moved into a retirement home, but my son insisted that I move in with him. He told me that I took care of him all those years and now it was his turn to take care of me. So I now live with him and he's taking very good care of me. I love this. My biological mother was autistic, very high functioning, but also suffered from extreme depression. She tried to kill me and her when I was 2. My aunt took me in and wanted to adopt me. She's amazing. CPS and New York City strongly supported her gaining legal custody of me, but my bio mom fought it for 5 years. Despite dozens of specialists, caseworkers, and doctors testifying that my bio mom was a danger to me, the state of New York refused to give my aunt full custody. My bio mom eventually surrendered custody when I was 7, after 5 years of legal battles, because she was pregnant with another child. No, that other child did not turn out okay. The amount of emotional trauma I endured as a child from having to repeatedly testify against my own mother in court still haunts me to this day, but at least I turned out okay. I also had to look my mother in the eye and testify against her in court. A lawyer tried ripping me a new butthole when I was 13 because I got choked up on the stand. Many hugs to you, friend. Hope you are doing better. In junior high, grade 6-8 in US, typically between the ages 11ish to 14ish, typical lowest to typical highest ages, but usually 11-13, I dated a girl who was in the foster system. There were 4 foster boys in the house. She was 14 and in 7th grade. I was 12. We went on a date for Valentine's Day to the mall and movies to see the movie Batteries Not Included, about the mini flying saucer aliens. She kept putting my hand up her skirt and on her boobs. I had been molested by a babysitter for a year and a half and felt very confused and a bit victimized by it all. She kept trying to pull my penis out and so forth. After the movie we ate in the food court and then she convinced me to sneak into the access hallways and make out. We kissed a lot and groped, but when she took her panties off and put them in my pocket and asked me to have sex with her, I told her I was not ready for that with her yet. She began crying. I told her I wanted to date her because I liked her and thought she was awesome. We hugged. We went to a mattress store, oddly enough, and sat on a mattress while she told me about how 2 of the boys in her foster home raped her on several occasions. That in the last 4 foster homes the fathers had all raped or molested her. Most of the boys in foster homes she had been and groped her or raped her. That 2 mothers had raped her with the fathers. That she had to shower in front of men and boys in various foster homes. That she was offered drugs and booze by the dads all the time. That she had been forced to be the girlfriend of the current dad's friend who was 27, until the guy went to jail for drugs and robbery. It was the saddest thing I have ever heard. We dated for the rest of the year. Then she got sent to live with her mom. Not a good thing. This is in 87, so cell phones, especially for kids, was not a thing. She had my number, but her foster parents went through all her stuff before she left and trashed a lot. I forgot about her panties until I got home. Asked her how she wanted me to give them back to her. She told me to keep them. Had them for most of puberty. Another girlfriend found them and threw them out a few years later. As for if we did more naughty stuff after that date, but that is not really a part of the story. I did tell my dad what she told me, and he went to the foster house. She told me that after that, they left her alone. No touching and nothing sexual. She considered my dad a hero. I do not know what all he did or said. He still will not talk about it, but when he came home, he saddled his horse and rode alone through the woods on their ranch for a few hours, not coming back until dark. My mom had to bandage his hands. My dad is the most awesome man I know. He is my stepdad, but he has always been a real dad. Kind of my hero as well. Sorry about making this about me too. My point was how horrible the foster system was for her. Your dad seems like the kind of guy I wish all of us men could be just a bit more like. Aging out. You have no one to turn to, no one to tell you how to be an adult. I remember being 18 and crying my eyes out because I thought I could be arrested for not being able to pay my electric bill or just bills in general. Predatory people in general. You trust abusive, toxic people very easily. Where do you go for holidays? I have an awesome best friend whose mom begs me to come for holidays, but I usually choose to work because it just feels weird. Every time you accomplish something, no one is there to cheer you on. Now in my 30s, I've made a handful of awesome friends that are a huge help, but it took me a while to learn how to have a healthy relationship. Another thing is that a lot of us are introverts due to being ostracized at school and having to live in group homes or overcrowded foster homes where we were just a paycheck to a crappy foster parent. You just want quiet, and you are really okay being alone. A lot of us led nomadic lifestyles because we've become so used to the constant shuffling. I suppose I'll edit if I think of something else. I was a part of the foster care system in South Korea, and the foster home I lived in was great. Loving foster parents, plenty of attention, and genuine care for my well-being. Unfortunately, the rest of Korea was not as kind. I was given up by a single mom, which carries a very negative stigma in Korean society. The bullying from other kids and at school was awful just because of my negative background. I got beat up regularly. Kids would ruin my school supplies. Teachers would turn a blind eye. Other parents wouldn't even look at me, etc. I think times may have changed since then. It's been over a decade, but it deterred me from coming back to Korea to visit until recently. A little different, but my mom relinquished me to a group home without giving up custody when her abusive boyfriend made her choose which of us would leave. We went without groceries for 3 weeks because of employee embezzlement, so I only ate free lunch from school and nothing on weekends. My bus arrived too late to get school breakfast. We also didn't have hygiene products during this time, so I stank in dirty clothes. My home ec teacher did a fundraiser and sold cupcakes during class, and the girl at my table bought 3. I was drooling and watching her like a dog watches Thanksgiving dinner. She ate 1, then looked me in the eye and said she was too full to eat the others. She spit on the 2 leftover cupcakes and then threw them away. I put my head down and cried. After class, I told the teacher I was hungry and the group home had no food. She asked me what I wanted her to do, so I just said I didn't know and left for my next class. She never spoke about it again or even checked in to see if I had gotten access to food. Later that week, Cupcake Girl told me I was nasty and stank so bad no one could stand me. I dropped out of school a week later. I made friends with the other group home kids, and a few of them asked if I wanted to go to the park while the guys played basketball. I did, and planned to walk with 2 of the guys to meet up with the other girls and their boyfriends. One dragged me in his room and raped me while the other stood guard for staff. I immediately went to the director crying. Because I was still in my mom's custody, they called her when they called the police. My mom laughed and told them I was a mess and lied about men like this all the time, so the police snapped their books shut, and the director ripped me a new one for being just another prejudiced rich white girl lying about being raped by a black boy before kicking me out. Apparently she knew I was trouble from the start since my mama didn't want me. People had a hard time believing an upper middle class, professional family just didn't want me. I always got asked, but what did you do? You must have done something. So I was a homeless teenager after that for a few years. No one got involved. No one gave a crap. It was easier to believe that I was troubled instead of accepting that a nurse and special ed teacher were horribly abusive. After class, I told the teacher I was hungry and the group home had no food. She asked me what I wanted her to do. I don't know why, but this bothers me the most. I imagine it took a lot of courage for you to even say anything. That's C. For what it's worth, this internet friend is rooting for you. You deserve love and joy in relationships with good people. I hope you are doing well. Let's see. Well, I wasn't allowed to shower. Only once every couple of weeks. I had to go to other people's houses and the schools to wash. I had to walk on the freeway to school and it rained a lot in the town, so my shoes smelt bad and my toes kinda pushed together from where the shoes got smaller. Then my toenails got infected and they still are. I got called ugly and dumb. Oh, and best part, the system told me to suck it up because I could get worse people. I went into foster care after my parents for 11 years killed themselves when it was discovered they were trafficking me. Got picked up by a foster family and adopted very quickly. Very lucky. Christ, how is this so far down? I hope things are going okay for you now. Oh boy, okay, this was a while ago, but I was in the foster care system for only about 2 months when I was 8 because my grandmother was in rehab, who raised me. Dad was in jail and I haven't seen my birth mom since I was 1, so I had no immediate family member to take care of me. I remember I was placed with this Indian family who had this huge house and they had a bunch of extended family members who lived with them, like the mom's grandma and grandpa, and they had 3 kids of their own. I'm gonna keep this short, but I have these vivid memories of the grandmother basically dragging me by one arm on multiple occasions up and down these huge stairs when no one else was home, to the point where it felt like my arm was gonna fall off. I can't even remember why, I just remember being terrified of that crazy bee. I remember she also didn't speak English well but would tell me she was my mom after like 2 days of knowing her, and like forced herself to bathe me when I knew how to bathe myself like any normal freaking 8-year-old does. All in all, I don't remember a ton from that 2-month period, maybe because I don't want to, but I remember thinking if I ever had to go through that again I would just run away. Luckily my grandma got her crap together and got sober. The first home I was put in was a really strict household that would discipline beat me a lot. However, a majority of the time they would just have the older kids do it instead. Luckily I called the ombudsman and was quickly moved into a nice home. They got their license removed as well. I believe I was in 1st grade at the time, my younger brother in kindergarten, so we're 6 and 5, respectively. The oldest boy in the house, I think he was in his late teens, perhaps even an adult, kept encouraging us to play with him. As a kid, I didn't realize then what he was doing to us or had us to him, and how inappropriate it all was. Guy was a pedophile, I realized much later. Anyway, my brother and I very accidentally burned their house down and got sent to a different, much better foster home. A gal guardian ad litem, saying in the court that I didn't want go home with my mom. I was 17ish, after I had just told her in the chambers I wanted to be with my mom. The dumb bee. I was told very clearly once that a gal is not your friend. The one that I've had the unfortunate pleasure of meeting did something really similar to what you experienced. She was a total snake. I woke up to my 300-pound foster brother sitting on top of me and choking me half to death. Girls would constantly steal anything nice I got. This included shower stuff and soaps, a laptop, it was a school laptop, and so many clothes. A lot of fist fighting. Didn't get enough food because people would take it, and caught pneumonia twice in 1 month because my foster parents decided a new sports car was more important than heaters or thick winter coats. I was locked in a pantry for a day or so when I, 6 years old, misbehaved. I was threatened often and not fed properly. I was rarely allowed to shower. I had very long pretty hair that I enjoyed and had it chopped off as punishment. But the scariest part was having a younger sibling, and threats to harm her was the norm. I could write a series of novels. I'm currently in the early stages of taking them to court. I won't get into the sexual abuse for obvious reasons, but a small collection of instances. After the first couple months in the foster home, I was not allowed to take any food to school. Prior to that, my lunchbox was a bread bag. The school instituted a rule stopping kids from sharing their food because of me. My bedroom was in a barn outside the house. Despite there being 2 spare rooms in the house, it was cleaned out days after we moved in. We were sleeping on couches in the lounge in the meantime, and was full of insects, spiders, and even a snake. There was a resident fruit bat in the main room of the barn. I was locked out of the house, on a farm, 20 kilometers from town, during summer, for up to 3 days at a time, with no food or anything to drink. All my clothes except what I was currently wearing at any given time were locked in the house. When I ran away to a neighbor's, I was chased and beaten with a lump of wood by the family's youngest son after the neighbor brought me back. I was 12. He was 17/18. I have a number of scars from various assaults and even burns caused by them. The only time they'd clean the house was when they thought the Dept of Human Services was going to show up. I recently found out through my files that DHS caught them out on this during a surprise visit in 1998. And the worker also reported extensively the feral living conditions we were in. I was moved out of there in 2002 because the neighbors I mentioned above called the police the second time I went to their house. So DHS knew for 4 years and did nothing. I was given one toothbrush when we moved with the foster family. I was there for 7 years. We also were never provided soap, shampoo, conditioner etc. And even better, were forced to bathe in the water that several of them had showers in. So by the time we got in there, it was filthy. I wish you best of luck in the court. For an entire year I wasn't allowed to sit on the couch. I had to sit on the floor in front of it and stare at the wall. They frequently reminded me that the dogs were better than me, and to this day the crap that's happened to me haunts me at night. I hope things get easier for you. In 7th grade I had a friend named Kyrie, but nobody called her that. Everyone called her Cookie cause that's what she told everyone her name was. Teachers, kids, anyone. Hey Cookie, what's your real name? That is my real name. We only found out her name was Kyrie after we had a sub in science who she didn't tell in time. She was a weirdo, but lots of fun to hang out with. She was into anime and came to school cosplaying every once in a while. She also liked MLP and Teen Titans. We had lots in common and got along great. About 3 weeks before the school year ended, she disappeared. Like, nobody knew where she went. I kind of forgot about her for a couple of years, and then I have one of those moments where a random thing hits you out of nowhere. I ask some friends and they tell me all the horror stories about the awful crap her dad did to her. She disappeared cause CPS finally found out and yanked her out. I stumbled across her Instagram on accident a while back. I don't know if I can say what it is, but it's a pun revolving around cookies and weed. Turns out, CPS was even worse for her. She was molested semi-regularly by other kids. Now she's living with a sugar daddy who treats her like crap but gives her a place to live. She's 16 by the way. I feel that's important to note. My biological father taking his machete and cutting my arms up while trying to protect my mother while he was drunk off his butt in a motel room. I stopped a machete attack on my mom by her BF. I wasn't hit but she was hit in temple and forearm. I was already in foster care but had run away. I grew up as the biological son among many foster children. My family always took in other boys around my age since I was 10 and even today as I'm turning 19. Though we've had a few young kids and even a few severely challenged kids. I like to think we are the one decent family that never locks up food or forces communal baths or any of that crazy crap. Everyone has their own rooms and like regular teen boys they get nagged to clean them from my mom but they never do lol. We've had a few that have lived with us for years and we will always consider them family. Invite for Christmas and all that family stuff. Especially one. Though men come through clearly angry at the world and it makes it hard to make a meaningful connection or to not judge. That's really cool of your family. I've always wanted to foster to be like your family. I live in a state that has a low bar for reunification. I had hoped one day I could foster so the kids know that no matter what a crappy place they go back to someone who still cares about them. I was in foster care for 13 years. My mom was a drug addict and my dad was a drunken druggie. I remember being 6 and just had moved from my first ever foster home where I had lived for 2 years and the lady I moved in with she got mad at me and threw me off her lap and onto the floor telling me that when I was done being a baby that we could talk like adults. She also used to put me into ice cold showers whenever I acted up or cried. She would lock me in the basement and I wasn't allowed out of my room during the night so if I had to go to the bathroom she made me go in a bucket. There was also 3 bathrooms in the house but I was only allowed to use the basement one cause she was afraid I would pee on the seat. One time I got sick and threw up and she made me drink vinegar and when I threw up again she hit me. She used to push me down the stairs. I had lived there till I was 8. Another home I lived at after that was even worse. I had lived with 2 other foster girls and I remember one time being 9 or 10 and I had been playing with my toys too loud and I had woken up her real son and she pulled me by my hair and made me go into the cold cellar. I remember crying and apologizing saying I would stop and play with something else cause it was cold. It was winter. I guess my crying was bothering her son that he went and grabbed 2 cups, one of cold water and the other of ice and dumped it all over me. Other times she would grab me or the other girls by our jaws and step on our toes and she wasn't a small woman so it hurt and she would yell how worthless we were. At 9 years old we were called nasty names. like us and stuff like that. We were called fat and none of us were even fat or even liking boys in that way yet. She would lock us outside in the winter with just our socks and jeans and long sleeves and we would have to freeze till she thought we should come in. She also would hit us with the fly swatter when she was mad. Another time I remember being 11 years old and we had this one girl move in and this foster mom had just allowed for this girl to attack me. I had just come out of my room to see if I could have a snack and when I noticed that no one was around I found weird but I was about to go back to my room when she just came out of nowhere and just attacked me and dragged me into the bathroom and she sat down on me and I couldn't breathe. She was just going at me. I still have no idea why this happened, but she was later moved within a few weeks. The 3 other girls and I were beaten daily by this one foster mom. We were kept home quite often because we had bruises. Sometimes she was really nice but then she was like this. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.